Hey there, career seekers. Welcome to Find Your Passion Career. I'm here to help you find a career you like, and dare I say, possibly even love. I'm your host, Amanda Nachman. I'm the founder and CEO of College Magazine. After working with thousands of college students, I've noticed that when it comes to career, there's a lot to demystify. Let's get started. This episode is brought to you by Meetup. At Meetup, great things happen when people come together. By starting a group on Meetup, you can expand your network and learn new skills. Start with your interest, whether it's design, technology, climate action, or anything else, and Meetup will automatically promote your group to the people who share your passions. Create a Meetup group today using a .edu email and get a free 6-month subscription. Head to meetup.com to get started. Hi, everyone. Today I have with me Dr. Tsukayama. He's an assistant professor of business administration at the University of Hawaiʻi, West Oʻahu. Before UHWO, Dr. Tsukayama taught at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia and USC in Los Angeles. His research focuses on understanding the individual differences, like personality traits, that can be used to segment and understand target markets. He has extensive background in statistics, as well as 7 years of experience working in the corporate world as an information technology IT consultant. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so how did you imagine your career path being during college and after?
Well, from college, I kind of knew from my freshman year, I took an intro psych class. And up to that point, I thought that intro psychology was about things like therapies and disorders and what's wrong with people. Well, when I took that intro psych class, which is taught by humanistic psychologists, and humanistic psychology is very much about like meaning and purpose in life. But also intro psychology just kind of covers things like personality and intelligence and happiness and emotions and all these things that I was really interested in. So it's kind of at that point that I decided like I want to be a professor and a psychology professor.
That's so cool. I mean, I think back to some of those like intro classes in college, and it's like it either sparks for you or it doesn't. And it sounds like this class really made an impact for you.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes the case for, why these schools have you taking some of these initial classes and why it's great to try things. I mean, it sounds like you weren't even aware that this would be something for you.
No, like I had no idea when I took the class. But pretty much by the end of the class, I kind of knew, like in my mind, like I want to be a psychology professor and I want to go into psychology. Oh,
that's awesome. Okay. Well, so what inspired you to research grit and perseverance? Because you have done some extensive research in this space. You worked with the renowned Angela Duckworth, and I would just love to hear about, what inspired this.
So good question. So my senior year of college, by that point, I started off at a community college. So when I decided I want to be a professor, I thought I was going to be teaching, which I was totally fine with. Like that's what I thought I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to like teach students.
Wait, so when you're becoming a professor, to all those listening who might think that as well, it's not just teaching, right?
No. So generally not. So at a community college, yes, that's practically all the professors do is they teach students. That's their main job. But most of the well-known universities, so most the flagship campuses at state universities, even say at the University of Hawaiʻi, where I went to after Leeward Community College, but all these big name universities like Harvard University, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, and again, the big state universities like University of Michigan, University of, UCLA, UC Berkeley. These are all
give
research.
A shout out to Maryland, fellow Terps.
Oh, University of Maryland, College Park. So all of these flagship campuses, they're actually research universities. So the professors there, their main job is to do research, not necessarily to teach students.
Shocking, right? To like any student listener out there, like probably like, what? Because like, you just think the professors are there to help you and teach you, but they're also advancing research.
Right. And the really good professors, they do both. But again, at these, even to an extent, especially at these high name, like top tier universities like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, their main goal is actually to do research more so than teaching. Right. For most students, we mostly see them in the classroom context. That's what we think. But yeah, a lot of students don't realize that at these top universities, They're there to do research. So I didn't realize that until I hit the flagship campus of the University of Hawaiʻi after Leeward Community College. That, oh, actually, if I want to be a professor, if I want to even do a PhD and to go to grad school, I need to learn how to do research.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, well, that's what I got to do. That's what I got to do. So then I started like working in the lab, doing research, joined the honors program. And then for the honors program, because they know that like that probably means you want to go to grad school, you're gonna have to do research as your honors project. So for my honors thesis, I kind of decided that I wanted to, okay, backing up a little bit.
Okay.
We have a saying in psychology that research is me search. And the idea is that psychologists often do research on things related to them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Either something we're really good at or something really bad at. For better or worse. So actually, somewhat unfortunately, like a lot of psychologists who study, say, depression, it might be because they're depressed.
Interesting.
A lot of psychologists study, say, phobias might be because they have a certain phobia, and so on. So for me, at least, I had some personal observations. I noticed that, like, I don't think I'm very smart, but I think I work hard. Whereas I have a lot of friends who I think are way smarter than me in terms of like cognitive ability, but they didn't apply themselves. They, watch TV or play video games a lot and just didn't focus on their whole schoolwork, so they didn't do well. So with that observation, I was like, okay, you know what? I think I want to do my research and my honors project on this idea that these academic high achievers, which I operationalized as kind of the other honor students, as well as I was with this program called the Regents and Presidential Scholars. So this was a program where the University of Hawaiʻi gave full scholarships. So you had to apply for it, but if you got it, then you got a full scholarship pretty much to the University of Hawaiʻi.
Wow.
So my hypothesis was that these students, these high achievers, had like higher levels of things like self-discipline and academic self-efficacy and a future time perspective, and this new construct that I just read about called grit. So at the time, Angela was actually a grad student, but I was reading about grit as well as her original papers on self-control or self-discipline and academic achievement. So that's how I found out about Angela, was by reading her papers and reading about her research on grit. So I emailed her at the time saying, hey, I'm doing this honors project. Is it okay if I use your grit scale? Because at the time it wasn't published yet. So she was like, sure, like here it is. So I did my study on grit, and luckily the data supported my hypotheses that these academic high achievers were higher on things like grit, self-discipline, and academic self-efficacy and future time perspective than a control group of just like intro psych students.
Yeah. So it had nothing to do with this like innate ability to, get the question right, but about the ability to put your pen to the paper and get
right. So that was my hypothesis, but that's IQ tests are expensive and not easy to get. So I didn't formally test it. So I just kind of assumed, but there's a good chance that these academic high achievers actually would have had higher IQ scores. But so I don't have the data to test that.
No, but I think that is really interesting. I think that grit almost gives us all hope that we can achieve what we put our minds to.
Right. And actually what we do find in our grit research / data is that grit is often uncorrelated with measures of talent. So like IQ. Sometimes it's even negatively correlated.
Oh, interesting.
And that kind of matches my hypothesis. I don't think I'm very smart, but I work hard. It's also related. So we have this idea, I don't know if Angela's tested it yet, but really smart people or really talented people, they might not be gritty because everything has come easily for them. So they've never learned to develop grit. And again, like kind of casual observation just kind of suggests that's true to me. But yeah, for my friends who are super smart, if they do like hit a challenge or have a failure, it's a huge shock to them because everything came naturally to them. So they don't know how to deal with it.
Wow.
Whereas people struggle. And so kind of getting ahead of ourselves in a sense, like for me, I'm really now into like statistics and research methods. And part of the reason for that is that, so I went to the University of Pennsylvania for grad school. So that was a huge shock. For me, going from a public university for undergrad to a private Ivy League, that's one of the top universities for grad school and a PhD program. So have you heard of like imposter syndrome?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
this is like one of the core tenets of not having a qualified mindset, feeling like whatever you look ahead to, like, I'm just not good enough.
Right. So yeah,
Or when you even get it, when you finally do get that role, or you're at that Ivy League school feeling like, oh, I fooled everyone. How do they not see this?
Yep. So exactly. So I had a bad case of imposter syndrome when I got there. I was like, wow, like everyone is now way smarter than me. A lot of my colleagues have like went to like other Ivy Leagues for undergrad, and now they're at Ivy League for grad school. And actually, like during my interviews, people would actually kind of say stuff like, oh, you're like the applicant from the community college, which kind of emphasized this idea that, yeah, I am kind of an outlier. And I'm sure they didn't mean to be like, you don't belong here, but it just kind of emphasized that, yeah, I took a very different path. And like, I'm very different from the other students here. Mm-hmm. So although then I read up about like imposter syndrome, I kind of thought, like, do I have imposter syndrome? Or maybe I just really don't belong here. So along those lines though, my classes were a struggle. So like back at the University of Hawaiʻi, relatively easy to get like A's. Whereas I felt like at Penn, like I struggled just to get like a B+ or A-. But that's it. Statistics was a challenge, but I didn't felt like it wasn't that much more of a challenge than my other classes. Whereas like the other students, like the super smart students, even from who I went to say Harvard for undergrad, they struggled with statistics as well. So I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of like competitive advantage, but then I also kind of thought like this is related to competitive advantage, that like, yeah, I'm struggling with everything, but relative to other people, I'm not struggling with statistics like more than they are. So that was one of the factors. Another factor was Angela recognized the importance of statistics. So she encouraged me to like study statistics. Third factor was I knew I wanted to come home to Hawaii after grad school, or eventually to be a professor. So what I also kind of realized was it's relatively easy on the mainland to collect data, but it's pretty difficult in Hawaii, depending on what you're doing, to collect data. So I kind of realized that kind of as a statistician, if other people run the studies, collect the data for me, they can send me the data, I can run my analyses and send them the results. And I can do that from anywhere, including Hawaii. So those were some of the factors that inspired me to go into statistics. But another part of it was I actually kind of enjoyed it. And that was a big part. So I don't know if I would consider it a passion, but I enjoyed it. I liked it. So that's my first year of grad school. That's kind of why my path pivoted a little bit from studying, like, I thought it was going to be hardcore into like self-control and grit. And I was still into it. That was the content of my research. But I was more interested as an interest / kind of passion in the statistics and research methods than I was the actual content of my research.
Yeah, well, I think it just goes to show you can have many passions. And then there's different levels of how passionate you are about that thing, right? You may be a level 10 passion about statistics, but level 5 about studying grit and perseverance. Well, so actually I want to go back to a couple things. One was just that you made this courageous connection with Angela, who was a grad student at the time, that ended up turning into this incredible partnership. How did you know to reach out?
Good question. So I don't remember any like specific instance. I think just part of it was that I knew for my honors thesis, it would have helped a lot if I could have that grit scale. And I think I'm not positive if I knew this at the time, but one thing about academics is they love to talk about their own research. And they usually take it as a compliment if you want to talk to them about what they're interested in, what they're passionate about.
Yeah, I think that applies to everyone. If you reach out and you express interest in what they're doing, people are happy to share. And in turn, you get to learn about what they're doing.
I think that's very true. So yeah, for the listeners out there, especially if you guys are students, you think like, oh, I don't want to bother with this person. Often if it's something that they're interested in, they like to talk about it because it's their passion, it's their hobby. And they're probably thrilled that you're interested in something they're interested in.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about grit and growth mindset. Why do you feel a growth mindset is important, and how's that something that our listeners could work on if they feel like maybe they don't have a growth mindset or they want to have more of a growth mindset?
Oh yeah, so very, very important. In general, we also recently last year just published a paper on there. It looks like there's a bidirectional relationship between grit and growth mindset. By bidirectional relationship, what I mean is that it looks like we're not positive it's causal, but it looks like grit and growth mindset cause each other. Again, we're not positive, it's correlational research, but the data suggests that it's plausible that they lead to what we call like a virtuous cycle. So like where you have a vicious cycle where say like being depressed causes you to avoid people and become lonely, which causes you to become more depressed. That's like a vicious cycle. Yeah. So we can think of a virtuous cycle as something where a good thing causes another good thing, which leads to more of a good thing, which leads back to that good thing. So that's what it looks like grit and growth mindset are, that having this passion and perseverance for something and sticking with it leads you to kind of believe that, yeah, I can grow or improve in this thing. And having that growth mindset that I can improve in this thing leads you to like be more passionate and persevering in this thing, which theoretically makes sense. But again, it's correlational. No, so we're not positive it's causal, but it's theoretically plausible that it's causal.
Yeah. So if you don't believe that you can grow, that you just kind of have this mindset, you're like, my intelligence is fixed. This is where I'm at. This is all I'm good at. This is all I'll ever be good at. If you don't believe that you can grow and evolve and advance and gain skills, you're going to be missing out on this opportunity to persevere or be gritty in life and achieve at a high level, it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So just whether or not if it's even true, just having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset has huge implications on your behavior. And this is important in education, kind of obviously, but important in life in general, like sports, business, like whatever your career is, probably entails some sort of skill or ability that would be good if you can improve that. And if you think like, I can't improve in that, you're not going to get very far. So it's fundamentally important.
So knowing it's so important, what do you do if you are a listener who was raised with that belief and that belief is just kind of there? How do you break out of that? I don't know if you know the answer to that, but what do you recommend?
Yes, I don't know the answer to that. Again, I said theoretically plausible possibilities. I think knowing is the first step. So that's kind of where I was going. So just learning about growth mindset in the first place and learning about grit in the first place helps a lot. So at least for me, it helps a lot. For my intro stats students, as an extra credit assignment, I think I'm making it mandatory. But for now, I have them watch a 6-minute TED Talk on grit.
Nice. And
I found this 8-minute talk on growth mindset. So I have them watch that because a lot of Americans, and I'm American too, but a lot of us Americans, we think we're bad at math. And that said, it's kind of true. That yeah, on average we are compared to say like Taiwan or Japan or Singapore. Relatively speaking, we are. We also tend to have this fixed mindset that we think when we're bad at math, we're never going to be good at math. It's just like we're inherently bad at math. And we shouldn't have that mindset. We're kind of bad at math, maybe. And this might be partially my fault because we have bad teachers or professors that we weren't taught well enough. But I think a large part of it, again, especially for Americans, is we tend to have this fixed mindset, especially for like math ability. We think like, we're bad at math, we're never going to be good at math. So I try to tell my statistics students that you might be not so great at math right now, but it's the ability that you can improve as long as you invest the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to kind of realize you got to invest the time. So that's one of my main points. You got to spend at least 10 hours a week on this class. You can't just spend 1 or 2 hours, but like, this is hard. I'm never going to become good. Like, yes, it is hard. That's why you got to spend the time on. One of the implications of believing in a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset is, what do challenges represent? So if you're in a fixed mindset, challenges just reinforce this idea that I'm bad at this. I'm never going to become good at this. From a growth mindset, it's, well, yeah, there are these challenges, because that's what I need to do to become better. So just having that growth mindset helps you to kind of reconstruct these challenges and hopefully maybe make them not as psychologically negative.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think knowing it and hearing it, I think that is the first step. And so I hope that as listeners right now, your mind is spinning a little bit on this. Maybe you do recall that time when you're like, I'm just bad at math, or you say these things about yourself, or I always mess up on this. And maybe you can reframe that to start, so then you can start seeing these challenges as opportunities to grow. Well, okay. On the note of rejection, actually, can you share a time where you yourself have felt unqualified or faced career rejection, or what qualified means to you? Because everyone seems to have a different definition. I don't think there's any one right or wrong answer.
Yeah. So, right. The one that sticks out in my mind is that first year in grad school where, again, in hindsight, I guess it was kind of imposter syndrome. But at the time, even reading up about imposter syndrome, I was like, no, I might just be like the outlier who managed to like fool the admissions committee and get in. I
wish someone had told you the fact that you reached out and made that connection for your thesis, like that speaks volumes. I think a lot of young people don't realize that those skill sets are so valuable and they will help you in your future career, and it's noticeable.
Right. So, okay. Related to that, a huge factor in grad school and in life. So for the listeners out there, find a mentor. In fact, don't just find one mentor, find many mentors.
Yeah.
Actually, in my first year in community college, that was kind of the most important advice that two of my professors gave. And then those two became my mentors. And I know I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for them. So find mentors, and again, maybe focus on one for now, but find multiple mentors. So I've had multiple mentors throughout my career/life. So that's super important. And talk to them if you feel like you have imposter syndrome, or if you feel like it's real, or when you have challenges, when you have struggles, like those mentors are going to help you through.
Yeah. And so is that who you turn to when you're like, I'm an imposter, how did I end up here? Like, what's going on?
So no, actually, at this time, I think I was kind of almost too embarrassed, and I was almost feeling like I don't want them to think like I failed them. Like they helped me get to this point, and now like I might fail out my first year of grad school. So I think I was almost like too embarrassed like to talk to them, like my former mentors, about that. So I did talk to my then current mentor, Angela. So she didn't. I don't remember exactly what she told me, but I mean, obviously she helped me through that first year of grad school. And after that first year of grad school, after I got through that, I was like, okay, if I could survive this, I think I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Related to that, so both part of the reason why it was so stressful, and also part of the reason why like it was almost like a 180-degree turn after that first year, was in Penn psychology. You do your master's thesis in your first year. And by first year, I mean your first like 9 months there.
Oh, wow. So
you have to think of an idea, like run the study, analyze the data, write it up, along with taking your classes and adjusting to this new environment within like 9 months. So that's part of the reason it was so stressful. And that's also part of the reason after I finished that and did fine, I was like, okay, I think I'll be okay after this.
Yeah. I think that mantra of I've been here before, I can do it again. It seemed like you needed that first year to prove it to yourself that I've been there before. But maybe you could have pulled from something even prior to that, looking to all your hard work even prior to that. But I'm guilty of this too. We set the bar really high for ourselves sometimes, especially for us gritty folk. And I guess, how would you recommend someone persevere through these feelings of not being qualified, through these feelings of imposter syndrome?
So I guess maybe first, again, like knowing about it. So read up on imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Because chances, statistically speaking, you're not an outlier. Like theoretically it's possible, but like 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 possibility. Read up about it. So it's really common for women and minorities, and also really common at Ivy Leagues. But any prestigious position career-wise, education-wise, there's a huge proportion, maybe like 20, 30% of people kind of think they have imposter syndrome. And chances are you don't. So first step is learn about it. And then maybe talk to a mentor, or if you have an existing one, or if you have one in this new position, if it's a new career, or if it's a new educational program, like talk to your mentor, or if you have like a manager or someone above you, and say like, hey, like I've been having these thoughts, like, what do you think? Oh, and if you have like a cohort, if you have peers that are like come in the same position as you, talk to them and see how they feel, with the qualification that, of course, there's always a distribution. What I mean by that, there are going to be people on the top, there are going to be people on the bottom, wherever you are. So actually, kind of what helped me at Penn was just realizing, even if I'm the bottom of the top 3%, that's fine. It still means I'm in the top, of the population, the top 5%. So that kind of helped me like reframe it. But if you're at the bottom of the top, that's not too bad. But then realize, if you're going for emotional support, maybe don't talk to like the smartest person in your cohort. Maybe like talk to other people who are probably struggling as well, and realize that they might not know about imposter syndrome. They might be having the same negative emotions as you are. They might be embarrassed. They might not want to talk about their personal experiences. Also, related to that, a lot of people might be putting on a brave face. So you might be thinking, I'm the only person struggling here, when chances are about 30% of the other people in your cohort are also probably have these negative thoughts, and they're just kind of too embarrassed to share them.
Yeah, and when you know that someone shares this feeling, and you're not alone, and that's encouraging and helps you get through it. So remembering that as you're navigating your career, you are not alone in these feelings. Well, tell me about the object you brought and how it reflects your passion.
Okay, so I brought a stuffed Stitch.
It's adorable.
So yeah, I guess one way to kind of define passion is that you wake up in the morning thinking about it, and you go to sleep thinking about it. And I love my job, and I do kind of wake up thinking about and going to sleep thinking about it. But kind of more as a hobby, what I really love is traveling. And I think in part because I grew up in Hawaii, which by some definition is the most isolated like landmass in the world. Like, it's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It takes 5 or 6 hours just to fly to, say, Los Angeles or San Diego, which is like, I think, like the closest major cities to Honolulu. So I think that's part of the reason I like to travel, because I grew up on this small isolated landmass. So that's been harder now with COVID, but before COVID, back in 2019, in part because I'm a professor and I have summers, technically I'm off duty during the summers. I spent like 8 weeks just traveling around the world.
Wow.
I like to take pictures, but I don't like to take selfies. So kind of because that's why I bring Stitch. So I take pictures with Stitch or of Stitch and like the background or like wherever I am. So I don't have to take a picture of myself. But then people know when they see Stitch like in my pictures, like, oh, that's Eli taking that picture. And plus he's just a great like travel companion.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. It makes me think of that movie Amelie, where she takes a picture of the gnome all around.
So I actually haven't finished it. So I saw the first maybe 5 minutes of the movie and I haven't finished it yet.
Okay, but
it's on my list of movies to watch. But I think now I have to watch it.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Well, you'll have to share one of your Stitch photos with us.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Before we head out, what's one piece of advice you have for young professionals today in their career?
Okay. So this is kind of cliche, but like, be a nice person. And you've heard of Adam Grant?
Oh yeah, love him.
Yeah. So for the listeners, just in case you haven't heard of Adam Grant, he has a book, his first book, I think, called Give and Take. He has many more books now. But the basic idea is be a giver, be a nice person, like help other people. And actually in the long run, it's going to help yourself. So I actually didn't speak that much about that today at all. But in my career, my educational and job career, I think helping other people kind of got me to where I am today. And on one hand, not expecting anything back, but they helped me be successful. So help other people. And in a sense, it'll come back to you. If people know you're genuine, they're going to help you.
Yeah. And we talked about this before the interview about how that's been your higher level passion that you always point to. Can you just share a little bit about that before we go?
Yeah. So, right. So this idea of like higher passion is that in some ways it looks like my career / passions have changed. So I went from IT, which I was in for like 6 or 7 years, to deciding I wanted to become a psychology professor, to kind of ending up being a business professor. So it looks like things have changed, but like my higher order passion has kind of always been helping people. So when I was an IT consultant, I could help people with their computers. Like people are very stressed out. Like imagine what would happen if all your electronic devices broke today. That would suck. Like
it would be a rough day. That would be a rough day for sure.
So it's great if you can help people with their computers or their smartphones nowadays. Then when I decided to become a professor, like I thought, well, I can help people like become happier and just learn about these amazing things that we learn about in psychology, like grit and growth mindset. And again, just to be happy. And then now I'm a business professor, but still I help people. I help students like learn these things that are important for their career. And stepping a little back, so back in grad school, when I decided to like switch from the content of my research to statistics and methods, then I was able to help my friends in grad school, my cohort, other grad students, but also my PhD advisor, Angela Duckworth, with their research. And I enjoyed helping them with their research and being a collaborator. And I still do that today. Now my friends who were students back then are now professors all around the world. And now I can help them with their research. And that brings me meaning, but also I just enjoy helping them. So, and again, this has come back to me. Like I don't expect it, but this helps me in my career, in my life. By helping other people, they help me. They go out of their way to help me because they know like, they know it's genuine that I want to help them and be a good person and help other people. We have this tendency, and that's basically what give and take, Adam Grant's book is about, that as a giver, if you give from a good place and people know that you're genuine, like they want to help you. And I think in general, that's true.
Yeah. I think we underestimate the fact that people do want to help.
Yeah.
And so please take Eli's advice on this and find that mentor and remember to be kind. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And that's a wrap. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and stay in touch. Book me to speak at your next event or send your career questions to Amanda@findyourpassioncareer.com.